If you've been paying attention to the direction that many on the religious right have taken over the last 2 decades, you'll have noticed that a number of people have made the argument that the U.S. Constitution is founded on Judeo-Christian values. And some people, like Sarah Palin, have even gone so far as to claim that the Constitution is based on the Ten Commandments. Back in the mid-2000s, there were a number of very public spectacles where devout fundamentalist Christians were trying as hard as they could to keep representations of the Ten Commandments in courtrooms when other people were trying to remove them. Even as a Christian, I didn't get this attitude, and now as a non-believer, it strikes me as even more absurd that anyone would think that these Ten Commandments are in any way the foundations of our Constitution. This shouldn't need refuting. People really should have been paying attention in 8th grade social studies, but apparently a good percentage of the U.S. population did not pay attention during social studies because this keeps getting trumpeted from the religious right. The thing is, if we look at the Ten Commandments and the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, we don't even need to go very far to see that the first commandment and the First Amendment are in direct conflict with each other. Actually, I'll go even farther, that the First Amendment and the first 4 commandments are in direct conflict with each other. So let's look at Exodus 20. So let's look at the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and the first 4 of the Ten Commandments side by side. The First Amendment of the Constitution expressly forbids the establishment of a religion. The First Commandment explicitly establishes the worship of one God over all other potential gods. The First Amendment protects religious pluralism and allows people to worship as they see fit. The Second Commandment explicitly says that you are not to make any graven images or idols. Now, I personally very soon am planning to work on an art project where I will need a statue of the Hindu deity Ganesha. And a lot of Hindus in this country also purchase statues of Ganesha and other deities for religious observances throughout the year, or for just their daily lives. Some people who follow other traditional East Asian religions also buy statues of religious significance to keep in their stores or to honor their ancestors or so on and so on. If biblical principles truly were the foundations for our country's laws, it would be entirely possible that these activities would be a capital offense. I and these people who are purchasing these statues could be executed, just like how Yahweh had people executed when it was revealed that they had built a golden calf idol while he was dictating the Ten Commandments to Moses. The First Amendment of the American Constitution specifically protects free speech for any and all citizens so long as they don't endanger public health. For example, whipping the occupants of a crowded theater into a frenzy by yelling that there is a fire when there is no fire. With the exception of these situations, you are allowed to speak your mind freely and even say things that might be offensive. But the Third Commandment is a strict prohibition on using the name of Yahweh in vain, and it is threatened that a person who does this will not be held guiltless. The name of Yahweh was said to be so holy that, from what I understand, it was often abbreviated by ancient Jewish scribes so as not to say or write the full name and be in danger of dishonoring it. If the Ten Commandments were really the foundations of U.S. law, people like me and other YouTube atheists would be rounded up and imprisoned for blasphemy. Or heck, even going further, a teenager who writes or says the letters OMG could be dragged into prison or stoned to death for using the Lord's name in vain. Yet blasphemy is not a felony offense, and in fact, we would probably lock up the person trying to punish people for breaking this commandment because they are violating someone else's right to self-expression. The Fourth Commandment can only be understood as an enshrinement of a certain day's special status on religious grounds. This isn't quite as blatant of a conflict as the others. We do have holidays, or holy days after all, but it needs to be understood in the context of the rest of the Mosaic Law. Honoring the Sabbath and keeping it holy was not just a mild suggestion. According to the Old Testament, Sabbath breaking under the Mosaic Law was a capital crime. According to the book of Numbers, a man was stoned to death for doing the equivalent of yard work on Saturday, and this was all under God's orders. The American Constitution has no such prohibition, and even if it did, it would probably be repealed in an even shorter amount of time than the 18th Amendment was. If nothing else, the big businesses and government would find loopholes so that they could make more money and get more work done. Zipping to the end of the Ten Commandments, we have the command not to covet your neighbor's property, which includes his wife. 3 cheers for enlightened biblical patriarchy. But looking at the U.S. system of government, coveting is not only not forbidden by the Constitution, it is a foundational principle of the supply and demand dynamic that drives capitalism, which, for better or worse, is the American economic philosophy, even among many of these believers who, on one hand, want the Ten Commandments in every courtroom, but on the other hand, want a capitalistic free market and are envious of their neighbor's bigger house. So why is the 10th commandment treated with such flippant disregard if it is a foundational building block of American society and government? It doesn't make any sense. So that's 5 of the 10 commandments that are in serious conflict with only the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. And the other 5 commandments are so common among the world's various religions and philosophies that they can in no way be called specifically Judeo-Christian values. There's no possible way that one can say that the Constitution was based on these principles. But that will not stop the theocrats in our country from claiming that it is, which is why we need to be vigilant in maintaining a wall separating church and state. This is one of the several reasons why I and many others will be attending the Reason Rally on March 24th, 2012, and the American Atheist Convention, which is going to follow it. We need to show these burgeoning dominionist and reconstructionist movements that if they attempt to enshrine their superstitions into our national laws, they will face a vocal and well-informed opposition.